Hello and welcome to the Warcraft Academy Guide to General Nazgrim Normal. This fight involves dealing with waves of adds and DPSing the boss at suitable moments. If you only want a summary of the fight, use the menu at the top to skip to the end, otherwise keep watching. Throughout the fight, waves of 2 adds will appear every 45 seconds. I'll quickly explain what each add does. Corcoran Ironblades are warrior adds that will continuously cast Ironstorm, which is basically Bladestorm. You don't want to stand in these unless you're the tank, but these adds are otherwise fairly trivial. Corcoran Assassins are rogue adds that start the fight in stealth. They'll fixate on one player and attack him until the player dies. They'll use Backstab if they can get behind you, which does really high damage, or they'll just auto-attack you for around about 100k if they can't. You can also see who they're going to fixate since they'll put Assassin's Mark on the player, so you can preemptively shield them or use cooldowns if needed. You can also use a Hunter's Flare to reveal them from stealth early, which makes it easier to face towards them before they reach you so they don't backstab you and insta-kill you. They're also susceptible to stuns, snares and slows, so you can kite them very easily to prevent them from killing you as long as they're properly slowed. Corcoran Archweavers are mage adds that randomly blink around the room. They have 2 casted spells. The first is Magistrike, which is a targeted AoE attack that does minor damage and puts a short dot on players that get hit. They'll also use Arcing Shock, which is a casted nuke that damages a random player. However, every time they cast it, they gain a 25% damage buff that stacks up and up and up. So you need to kill them before this buff gets out of control or keep them stunned so they can't cast. Finally, Corcoran War Shamans are healers. They'll cast an empowered chain heal that must be interrupted because it heals for a ton, and they'll also cast an earth shield that has to be dispelled. They also drop healing tide totems on the ground next to them that does massive healing to any mobs within a few yards, and it will also heal the boss if he's too close. You need to move the mobs away from the totems when they're dropped and also kill the totem itself. You really need to keep the War Shamans interrupted and controlled as much as possible and focus them down every time they're up. Next we'll talk about the boss's abilities. He has a rage bar that gets filled up by certain abilities. Every 15 seconds he'll perform one action that costs rage, and he'll always use the most expensive action that he can afford, so you can control what abilities he does to a point. For 30 rage he can use Heroic Shockwave, where he leaps onto a random player and does physical damage to him and anyone nearby, and after that 3 fiery lines will move out from the impact point. The lines explode after a few seconds, so just avoid them and be spread out. If you do get hit, you'll take damage and the boss gains extra rage. For 50 rage he'll create a Corcoran banner. Whilst this banner is up, all attacks from adds on this fight will generate extra rage for Nazgrim. You need to focus these banners as absolute highest priority whenever they're up. Targeting macros can help with this. For 70 rage he'll cast War Song, which does physical damage to the whole raid equal to half your health. It's a good idea to use a raid cooldown whenever this is cast. Finally, for 100 rage he'll create a Ravager, which is basically an axe that moves around the room and spins around. If it hits you, you'll take high damage and the boss gains rage. These are a massive pain in the ass to deal with. Avoid letting the boss get 100 rage at all costs because it'll spiral out of control very quickly with these around. Other than these rage abilities, he has a random target debuff called Bone Cracker, which does damage and reduces the max health of the affected player by 10%, making him more vulnerable to being one-shot. He also has a tank ability, which is Sundering Blow, which is actually really important to the fight. Whenever he uses this on a tank, it grants him 5 rage and puts an armor reduction buff on the tank that stacks. For every stack of this on the tank, he'll gain an additional 5 rage when he uses Sundering Blow. So if you have 3 stacks for example, he'll gain 20 rage. For this reason, having tanks with high avoidance such as Brewmasters and Guardians will make this fight a lot easier. Alternatively, if you're playing 25 man, it's very advised that you roll with 3 tanks for this fight to keep your stacks lower. Finally, the boss also has 3 stances, each of which lasts for 1 minute. In Battle Stance, he'll gain 1 rage per second. In Berserker Stance, he'll deal and take 25% more damage. And in Defensive Stance, he'll take 25% less damage and all attacks against him generate Fury. Now, the stances are important because the stance he's currently in will determine what you attack. During Berserker Stance, for example, you want to get as much damage onto the boss as possible to take advantage of the extra damage taken, and during Defensive Stance, you shouldn't attack him at all. Generally, this fight is really simple as long as you follow the basic priority system: banners, healing tide totems, war shamans, arcweavers, and then assassins. Try to keep Arcweavers stunned as much as possible whilst you kill the War Shamans. Assassins should be revealed using a flare and then kited with slows as much as possible whilst they're killed. Have your tanks pick up Iron Blades and then ignore them. You should only DPS Iron Blades during defensive stance, because you can't DPS the boss during this time anyway, and they don't do anything deadly that prompts them to be killed sooner. It's really important that you don't DPS him during defensive stance, so call for a DPS stop when he has 1 or 2 seconds left on berserker stance, although pets can attack him safely and won't generate rage. You want to use as many cooldowns as possible during his berserker stance. You will eventually use Bloodlust in this phase, but this is best saved for when he gets to low health, because when he gets to 10% health you'll suddenly have a mass amount of ads to deal with, so you ideally want to push him to 10% when he's in berserker stance with Bloodlust active, and then burn the last 10% with Bloodlust. At this point you'll start ignoring all ads and only DPSing the boss. He'll always rotate his stances in the same order: battle, then berserker, and then defensive, each lasting for 1 minute. For positioning, we found it best to have him tanked near the entrance door so that it was easier for DPS to switch to the war banners, rather than having him all the way at the back where he spawns. Have all the ads tanked over to the left away from the boss so that he isn't healed by any healing tide totems that get dropped. Oh yeah, and there's a ton of ads at the start and they do absolutely nothing other than mess up your damage meter, so have fun AoEing on the pull. To summarise, tank boss away from ads, taunt to keep sundering blow stacks low. In order of priority, kill war banners, kill totems, kill war shamans, kill and stun archweavers, kill and kite assassins. Off tank iron blades and only kill them during defensive stance. Don't DPS the boss during defensive stance. DPS the boss hard during berserker stance. Ignore ads at 10% health and burn. Thank you very much for watching this guide, and if you have any comments or suggestions, please post them in the comment section below, and remember to visit warcraftacademy.com for all of our other guides for Siege of Orgrimmar. If you like this guide, please do subscribe, it really helps me out a lot, I really appreciate it. Thank you and catch you soon.